Hello everyone and welcome to another short video on our own devices. I'm Jean Messier, and next month my girlfriend Stacy and I will be celebrating our first year together. And to surprise me, the other day she gave me this fascinating timepiece, a modern Peugeot replica of a 1930s doctor's watch. So what's a doctor's watch, you ask? Well, this was a once popular subcategory of timepiece specifically designed to help doctors and nurses more accurately measure their patients' pulses. Now, measuring the pulse as a vital sign might seem like an intuitive and obvious practice, but in reality it was only popularized in the late 17th and early 18th century by English physician Sir John Floyer. You have to remember that at this time, relatively little was understood about human physiology, with the circulation of the blood having only been worked out a century before by another English physician, William Harvey. In addition to popularizing pulse measurement, Floyer also commissioned London watchmaker Samuel Watson to create the first doctor's watch to assist with this practice. This also happened to be one of history's first chronographs, featuring a lever for starting and stopping the movement. However, the first modern doctor's watch was patented in 1927 by Hermann Egler and Hans Wilsdorf, the founder of Rolex. At the time, most watches featured large centrally mounted hour and minute hands and a much smaller second hand mounted elsewhere on the face. Egler and Wilsdorf, however, created a narrow rectangular watch case with the hour and minute hands on one end and a much larger second hand on the other, making the latter easier for a doctor to see while taking a patient's pulse. This design also allowed for the inclusion of a larger central balance wheel, increasing the watch's accuracy. The pair dubbed the movement Caliber 877, and in 1928 Rolex released the first commercial doctor's watch using this movement, the Prince. At the same time, the American firm Gruen, which owned a stake in Egler, released a nearly identical watch using the same movement, dubbed the Technique Quadron. Even more than the Prince, the Technique Quadron was heavily marketed towards physicians. It was even offered with an optional feature called the Gruen Expanding Buckle that allowed the user to wear the watch higher up on their arm, out of the way of their hands. Other popular watches of the period which used this same format included the Longines Super Solo and Hamilton Sacron. Indeed, by the 1930s, watches like these became so popular among doctors that they became just as much of a calling card of the medical profession as other tools like stethoscopes, forehead mirrors, and pen lights. So even if you were outside the office, if you were wearing one of these watches, people would immediately assume that you were a doctor. But while this rectangular double-dial design is the most recognizable form of doctor's watch, there is another form that is arguably even more useful, the pulsometer, which is typically a regular watch or chronograph with a special scale added to the dial. So to use one of these, you would start counting your patient's pulse either at the neck or the wrist, and after a certain number of pulses, depending on the model of watch, you would glance at the dial and it would automatically give you a direct reading of beats per minute without having to perform any mental calculations. Now, there are a number of different variations on this design. Some watches required you to count 15 pulses, others 30, with the former multiplying the result by 4 and the latter by 2. Some of these doctor's watches were chronographs, meaning that you could stop and start the movement at will, while others were time-only pieces, meaning you had to wait for the second hand to complete a full sweep before you started counting. Still others, however, feature a double or even quadruple-ended second hand, so you don't need to wait more than 30 or 15 seconds before counting. Well, finally, some watches also included a separate thermometer scale for measuring breathing rate. As breathing rate is typically slower than heart rate, such scales usually only require you to count 5 to 10 breaths. And while rectangular doctor's watches have largely fallen out of fashion except for the occasional reproduction like this one, pulsometer watches are still widely manufactured and used by doctors the world over. And that, dear viewers, is a brief overview of doctor's watches, a subject I knew very little about until I was gifted this lovely example. So thank you so much to Stacy, I love you so much, and thank you to all of you for watching. I'll see you next time, another video where we'll look at yet more timepieces and other fascinating devices just like this one. Until then, I'm Jean Messier from Our Own Devices. Have a great day.